and happy first day of fall for costume. I'm Caitlin, and I'm a life coach who makes things. Now, if you're new to the adventuring party, essentially what we do around here is we increase authenticity in our lives by creating things that are more in alignment with who we are and our vision of what we'd prefer to be than what we see other people doing. It's important to note that we don't do that by rejecting the things that we like and aspire to be within the community. I have several sewists that I am absolutely obsessed with, but that doesn't mean that I allow that to taint what I would decide to make because they would go about it differently. I feel that that's an important distinction that many sewists need to keep in mind when they're just starting their creative journey. Your journey doesn't have to look like anybody else's. In fact, I would argue that it probably shouldn't. Allow yourself to get creative, allow yourself to get wild and do the things that you want to do. That is the whole point of creating anything. It's the point of making your own clothes. I feel people who are called to the creative arts tend to forget that along the way as they find more and more people who inspire them. They start the comparison game. Your art doesn't have to look like anybody else's. It probably shouldn't. I would argue that you need to allow yourself to exist as you are. No restrictions, no nothing. If you need to acquire a skill, great, please do that. But I am here, and this space is here to give you the flexibility to not feel like you have to look like someone else's work. For example, when I got into historical dress, it was at a time in my life where I was still trying to refine myself. I had lost myself for a number of years and had given my identity to a job that was not fulfilling or meaningful to me personally. And I just started sewing. I started binging Bernadette Banner's videos, first of all. I feel like she's the entry point for a lot of people. And then I started working on a Victorian walking suit inspired by Beetlejuice because I was going to see the Broadway before it was unfairly ousted from the Winter Garden. And sadly, there aren't that many pieces of evidence left of that costume because I, very burnt out, very sick, and very anxious, ended up vomiting on it right in front of the Winter Garden 10 minutes before we had to line up. So that costume sadly doesn't exist anymore. I fully intend to remake it one day, but that is how I started getting back into costuming and how I got into historical costuming in general. About 3 years on now, and I now wear historical dress almost full time. Now, I don't go as hard as some other do. I'm not exactly a lifestyler. I interpret historical dress so that I can wear it in a modern day office setting because I do have two jobs. I sell monuments and I also life coach. This is more of a fun side hobby for me. This is my way of consistently reconnecting with myself. And there is no shame in having to do that. I feel like a lot of hustle culture is everything has to be monetizable. Everything needs to be paid. And that is a dangerous game to get into, friends. I wouldn't go there. You don't have to break the bank to try to find yourself. You don't have to break the bank to do anything. It's finding out which aspects are worth investing in and which ones you can. For example, most of my historical pieces are in my jewelry. Everything else I make with fabric from Joann's or Walmart. I can't really, without saving up a lot of money, I can't save up for the really high-end fabric areas. Most fabric shops that are most commonly touted are very expensive, at least for me and my income. I live alone. So I need to cut corners where I can. It is an option. I feel like we have this very hard and fast vision of what it takes to be a real creator. that we often prevent ourselves from trying for that reason. I have to commit to having 100% cotton all the time, even if we can't afford it, or afford the upkeep for certain things. I have to always do historical practice, and if I don't, I'm an imposter and I don't actually care about historical dress. Also not true. If I incorporate cosplay, then it's not historically accurate, and therefore it doesn't count. Also not true. There will be members of the community who will say that everything I just said is complete blasphemy. I would say do it anyway. If you want to make a full Victorian Beetlejuice, you do that. If you want to make some form of interpretation of Lucy in medieval dress from Disenchanted, you do that. Allow your imagination to run wild. Allow yourself to get crazy with it, because I feel like, especially after everything that's happened, we need people who are willing to get a little bit creatively crazy. We need more fun. We need something that is just out there. And honestly, it's more fulfilling that way. It's more fulfilling to live your life trying to have fun, trying to experiment and create things that you would wear every day that are inspired by something you wouldn't expect to be able to. Don't feel beholden to what you see already just because what you want to do hasn't been done by someone else yet. And that is kind of, as an introduction, that is kind of my entire ethos around how I talk about creating. Allow it to exist. Allow you to exist. That is a lesson that I've had to learn and relearn and relearn and relearn again and again and again. And that is probably something I'm going to spend my entire life relearning. That there is no one way to succeed. There is no one way to be that is going to guarantee that I live a very successful by other people's metric life.